Welcome back, step 2. Welcome back. So I thought I would, well, do you know what I want to start with? Because the centre has got nothing very much happening in it. And I feel like I love stencils as a way to kind of fill an area with something that reads as foliage and, you know, stepped back leaves in front of each other. And so I think this stencil is a good way forward. Yeah, okay. Gosh, I keep seeing this stuff that I want to use and it's like starting to, yeah, I keep seeing things that I want to use over there, you know, I think, oh yeah, I can do that next and that next, and then needing to come back to this step. Like John Henry Newman said, I think, it's gas the people you quote, isn't it? He said, I do not ask to see the distant path, one step enough for me. And I suppose it's good to focus on what we're at now, like. Okay. So I'm mixing up a green, but I want it again to be kind of dull. And I'm making it quite dark as the first layer, and there's no, you know, so what I'm wanting to do is something like, let's see what will happen, but you know, something like that in there to act as a background for the sunflower that's there. Is somebody, would somebody mind timing me for 15 minutes? Can you do that easily on both
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to put on something. I put a bit more brown into it, and I saw that it was still a little bit colourful and green. So I put a wee bit more. Do you know what? I'm not putting brown in it. It's actually green, so that's why it's still looking green. Okay. So I've just put some red into it now. A bit of cadmium red to give me that more dull feel. And a touch of water because it wasn't moving as I wanted it to. And so we can do it like that. Could even maybe, I don't know if this is going to really work, but you could even splash some on as well. Yeah, just gives it, you know, something. If you want to get there quickly, it's quite a good way to do that, I think. And then you could always lift off anywhere that you're not happy with it being. It's okay. It's okay everywhere, really, I think. The back of that sunflower. Okay. Okay, so what I thought might be useful is to put something down to describe those pinks. So I'm just going to start with the heel of my hand in a colour that reads, as it came out of the pot, it looked really quite like the pink of those flowers. And just to really stamp them on there, that one was a bit greener. To just stamp them on, yeah. That needs to be the brighter one up here, doesn't it? Okay. So I think as soon as you know you want to do something, I think it's good to push it really firmly in place, like, and to have, and maybe as I look at that now as well, the reds here would be quite good to establish as well. So then I was going to talk about how I would like to use these brushes. And of course we have our palette to hold the palette up so I can show you the colours that I'm using here. I would say that the centre of that red flower is kind of calling for a bit of colour. So that's ultramarine blue, and I'm going to put some red in it. It's ultramarine blue and the darker of the two greens, but I wanted it to read as the centre of the red flower. So I'll put that on there like that. And then some of the, when I half close my eyes, some of the petals even start with that dark colour there as well. Okay, but the thing I wanted to show you with regard to these brushes is the way that you can cut in. So I'm really cleaning the brush off well now. Thanks Anna for the loan of your brushes. Yeah, actually, me just use this as a way of cutting in the sunflower green. So the edge around the yellow of the sunflower has got these green bits coming in. I'm going to try and make that green with the lemon yellow. Lemon yellow and the phthalo green, actually. I've got that if you want to ask me for it, or else lemon yellow and ultramarine blue will make that colour. And so I'm mixing the colour really well, so it's really well mixed, and then scooping it up with the brush, which comes to a fine edge, and it's got a ridge of that colour there now, so that when I want to find a place where, like I can see that there's a triangle of green in between some of those petals in the sunflower there, and so I've turned that ridge of paint that's on that side, I've turned it in so that it's going to occupy the space of that triangle really well. It's covering over what's there already, really, really cleanly. And as well as using that for the background, like that's actually a little bit too bright, isn't it? I think I need some more dark on there. So I've picked up some ultramarine blue and I'm deepening the tone of that as it comes in to meet the centre of the sunflower. It reads this quite dark, and then it gets a little bit more greeny when it comes out the way there. But it would be possible to do that in a few places. You can see that this is actually dark as well behind there. And I just find these brushes really good for that kind of chipping in. So again here, to create the other side of that petal, there's a really dark little bit. And I think it's worth focusing on the shape of some individual petals, forgetting that they're, forgetting that you have to make it a petal, but just seeing the edge of what happens where the background meets it. And just that little rectangle, I think, helps to describe the character of this petal. And then there's another bit that goes this way for about the same length as it goes that way. So it's this kind of talking yourself around the edge of things. And then you can have the wild freedom, but then some parts that are particularly focused upon to be drawn out in contrast. Yeah, and I'm going to use some of the light green again to do the same thing as I did here in order to soften it, let it, merge into the background. So when I said that I was doing a demonstration and I said what we were going to do, I don't think I said that I was going to do this today. What were you expecting? And tell me.
You said you do some demonstrate about the brushes.
Using the brush, so I'm kind of doing that.
And the pink.
And the purpley flowers, yeah, let's do that. Okay. So I'm just going to...
It's all useful.
It is, yeah, thanks very much, Alison. you can come again. So then I'll just finish off what the thing I was trying to do there was to kind of explain the edge. I'm really like windscreen wipers on top speed over and back so that what I'm seeing is being transferred immediately, and you can kind of get into a rhythm and flow where all there is this edge and aiming to capture, and whatever it is that's next revealed to you here by your looking. And it might not be a following up, it might be something over here. It might be the edge of something, something different up there. And actually, as I look at it now, I think to myself, I could do with painting, and I will do the purple flowers, but I feel like I could do with painting the stem on that. Let me just lose the edge of that a little bit right there. I was thinking I could do with painting the stem on that Jarbara that's shooting straight up here, the yellow one. And so I'll just find a piece of the stencil that's straight, and let me quickly do the shape of that. And then the bit sticking up. Yeah, so you can use any brush to put the stuff down, but I suppose it's the chipping in bits that I like to use these brushes for, really. They let you get into some real detail. Okay, so in explaining those, get rid of that, because it's trumpeting up the way, isn't it? So to explain those purplish flowers, I think the next step might be just like a thumbprint in the centre. needs to be a bit higher than I've got it. So a thumbprint there, and maybe the same here and here. And you could do it a touch more colour, I think, in it. Especially the top of it is, the top of the centre seems to be catching the light there. So just a little bit of lemon yellow mixed in with the green. I'll give that feeling. Okay, and then again we'll chip in with the brushes to make the edge of, to make the next thing with the purple flower is maybe to just come in over the edge. Okay. So ultramarine blue and lemon yellow. And I'm going to make it darker because I think it needs to be darker where I'm meeting the purple. And some of the, you see, inside, beside the centre is that dark. The bits where the petals extend from, before we meet the centre of the flower, it's actually really quite dark in there. So the colour I was going to use to draw in from the outside is what I'm using for the, put a bit more red in it. And that's what I'm using for the bit that's extending out from the centre there. And then at the bottom of that, flower, there's a bright yellow. At the bottom of that purple. So if I lift up enough bright yellow on the brush and place it on thickly enough, it should provide coverage to create the bent over petal of that flower at the bottom, and then the little triangular shape of the one that's extending down. And using the brush parallel to the paper will really let it thickly cover. And I think while I'm at it, I might as well cover, you know, with that colour on the brush, I might as well continue the other flower down there too a little bit.
And is that just bright yellow on its own?
That's just the lemon yellow on its own, yeah. And then just because I want to do something a little bit, something else. Okay, let's stick it on like that. And that would be maybe a colour for the centre of that flower. And that one too. That's quite nice. It's quite a nice colour to bring into the mix, I reckon. This is Alison's rag again. Okay, so to carry on with this one, just a little bit of the dark now with I'm going to use a brush that's got it's clean, because the yellow one I might use again. And I've just made a really dark colour again with a very dark green that was on my palette there. You can ask me, it's a phthalo green, and I've got a tube of it. And it just works with the colour that's already on there to make a very dark triangle that I'm seeing coming in to meet the brighter light petals on this purple flower from the top. So it's outlined by the brightness of the yellow on the bottom, but it's outlined by, I think, a darkish green in places on the top. And then there's an in-betweeny kind of a green happening as well. So with the cadmium yellow and the ultramarine blue, I think that's the colour that's in the, it's not really, there's a bit more blue in it. That's the next colour that meets the edge, I think, is that. I was saying to somebody earlier, you know, in the demonstration it's all like quick and all the rest of it, but actually in between there's an awful lot of really, like I recommend that you steady yourself to really observe and let yourself really take in the part that you're working on, and then work up to the mark by creating the colour, getting the brush and the consistency of paint that will make the mark for you, and then coming back and steadying yourself again, and then placing it down. So it's not as though you're working blindly at any point, like really there's a pointed focus on what's here and then a kind of working up to it and placing it down best you can. So it's not as though it's all urgency and there's no real observation. I think a huge amount of this and the satisfaction of it, I think, is in being attentive to whatever it is that's revealed to you, you know, from where you're looking. Okay. So although I seem in a bit of a panic, like I am kind of looking all right, but I am looking hard, really. In between there too. Is the timer going to go off, Anna?
I think so.
Yeah.
You've got
Just a couple of minutes maybe.
1 minute left.
All right, okay. So once we've done the dark in there, the next thing I would do then is I would revisit that lovely bright colour with a clean finger, or maybe a clean brush. I'm talking about using these brushes, I should really use them. So along the ridge of that now there's a good line of that bright colour, and it just happens, I think, to be the colour that I'm looking for straight from the tube really. And so I'm going to fill in the spaces now that I've carved in. So you're not trusting that the first mark was the shape of the flower. You're working, pushing and pulling from the edge in and from the inside out. And then maybe a bit over here as well. I mean, it's all right.
Time.
Okay, yeah. A bit of white mixed into it might make it a bit brighter too. In places that you want it to really be lighter, you could work on, you could put a touch of white into it, not as much as I did there, but a bit of white would give it just a slightly different tone again. It's good to have maybe 3 tones in the flower, like the darkest bit, the mid-tone, and then the bit that's really catching the light. Try and emphasise that light by the contrast. And then that centre, that sunflower needs to happen, doesn't it? But I think the dark at the middle of the sunflower really helps with the, when you put in the dark really punchy, then you can pull out the brightness around it. Because in this setup, the sunflower is the darkest part of the whole thing, isn't it? The darkened sunflower. Okay, I have a feeling that like in the afternoon you really need your time to paint, and you know, you're sitting there having to, so just go on and I'll have a look at your work as we go around and we can see. But thanks for your attention, and thank you for your attention as well. That's what happened there. It's a bit of chaos still, but anyway, put it out.